Good afternoon, everybody. Starting a minute early. Oh, no, right on the dot. I did it. Thank you so much for being here. I know there's a lot of wonderful talks today, so please give a round of applause to NarraScope. There's just such wonderful programming, but I'm glad you all joined me here today. Before we get started, I wanted to do a little classroom thing, and this is going to be very brief. What is the most you've ever had to write for a project? Like word count, page numbers, just shout them out. 70,000 words. Jesus Christ. 25,000 words. Writing novels on the daily. Anyone else? What? 180. Okay. My question for all of you. Was that hard? A little bit hard, a little bit difficult. So that is a question I like to ask a lot of people. You don't realize how much you're writing until you actually put the numbers to it. We are kindred spirits, and hopefully today's presentation will help you the next time that sort of project happens at you again. To begin, hello everyone, my name is Liz Anderson, and welcome to my presentation, 20,000 Prompts Under the Sea. To table set, when I submitted this title, I hated it immediately. I tried to do a real marine metaphor, and it just didn't work out, so if you'll bear with me. I would like to welcome you all to the content hole. Welcome to the content hole. How to write when there will never be enough writing, and how to make sure your writing is still good. My pedigree, hello, my name is Liz, you're at my talk. I am a writer/comedy writer, and I have been for the better part of a decade. I'm a former fellow and current contributor at The Onion since about 2016, and starting in 2020, I started working at Jackbox Games, and I am currently a writer and senior editorial lead. My career at this point has been defined by writing in very high volume for very specific editorial voices. And my own, of course, I write in high volume for myself, but one thing I'll note specifically, though, is I don't consider myself to be a narrative designer. I do narrative design in my work sometimes, but overall, I can't do what you do. So I write for games, which is related to what you all do, but not quite the same. So some of what I talk about today may not apply to some of your workflows necessarily, but I hope that you'll find at least some of these practices useful for the writing that you do. Okay. Welcome, it's whole time. We have a bucket, and that bucket needs content. What do we do? I want to say at the top, a lot of this is going to be things you already do. You've been writers for years, if not decades. You generate drafts naturally. My goal here is mainly to put words to the things that you're already doing, perhaps, and then maybe give you some best practices that will get you to higher quality content faster and with more consistency. With that in mind, to the hole! All right. Sometimes we get to take our time with writing. Sometimes we get to do beautiful lore and finely woven themes. Sometimes we get to say, yes, I am a writer. And then other times we do this. This hilariously low-res GIF is an actual screenshot of my brainstorming document for The Onion. It's 200 pages long, and I've been working in it for 7 years. It has thousands of jokes, hundreds of thousands of characters, and some of it's even funny. So you have been right there in the trenches with me. We all have a doc somewhere like this, where because of certain expectations of interactability, playtime, or player behavior, you need to populate lots of spots with lots of different things. Take my example, I work in party games, where that often involves thousands of interactable prompts, voiceover lines, written instructions that need to play the exact same way every 15-minute loop, but the content needs to be different every 15 minutes. These are gaping maws of need that can only be addressed with time and repetition. So you may be asking, how do I know if I'm working in high-volume content? Well, if you work in interactive fiction, I think you can safely assume that you do. You're naturally not writing one thing, you're writing many things. But if you want to further define it, I find it useful to put it into three categories. Are beautiful. First, we have content that is repetitive. These are the places where you need to obviously say the same thing over and over and over. If you went to Richard Dansky's talk yesterday, he talked about the idea of 300 words for the word grenade. This is often used to support player behavior. If you're dealing with this, it's probably because in playtests you found that players need to be told the same thing 500 times, but they'll get annoyed if they think you're saying the same thing 500 times. Good example of this is this little bitch. The orange flower from Super Mario Wonder. How many ways can you say, something's different here? And that is a question this guy answers. You can smell the playtesting on him. Just there's a certain style of play that Nintendo wanted to get across, obviously, and so they had to literally plant a flower there to tell people, look up there. So obviously repetitive, but not terribly annoying, just annoying enough. Next category is exacting. Content that is exacting needs to make players do a thing, or it needs to do a thing. And if it doesn't do it just right, no one can do the next thing. Sometimes these are instructions, sometimes these are, telling people what button to press, and sometimes these are the actual mechanic. But the important thing is that they're not fun, they're annoying, and they're precise to write. An example of this is a game I worked on last year called Suspectives. Suspectives is a game that relies on surveys as the main mechanic. People answer survey questions at the beginning of the game, and then the clues for a crime are used based on the answers to those survey questions. And we have to identify the criminal based on what we know about our fellow players. These survey questions needed to do 5 things at once. So first, be interesting on their own. There's a player expectation that our content is fun and funny. 2, generate strong, interesting opinions. We lose players if we were asking questions that were easy to write but boring, like what's your favorite color? 3, be easy to answer quickly. Our players write on their phones, so you have to be able to see it, read it, and answer it very quickly because 10 questions can get really, really long, and that's a long dead space at the beginning of a game. 4, reflect the tone of the game overall. That is something to do with the same thing as being interesting on their own, but there was also a noir sensibility to the game that we needed to match in tone. And then finally, these survey questions needed to make logical sense once spit out on the other side of the survey moment in the game. So there was a lot of actual file management and logic that would turn answers into sentences over here. A lot of things that needed to be considered in just that one unit of content. So that is extremely load-bearing for what essentially boils down to questions like, what Sex and the City character are you? So as I said, it was very exacting, very difficult to write, but we also needed hundreds of them to make a level of replayability that we wanted to get to. And finally, our last hole is burnable content. This is probably the one you've touched the most if you play games. And this is content that when the player sees it, they cannot use it again. Anyone who works in tabletop or general card games is familiar. I use Taboo as an example, where you cash out the content and then you realize, the game is done. And I say that Taboo is a pretty good example. Obviously, you can replay the cards, the game itself, with different groups. You can play it with different groups. But in that loop that you're playing with your friends, inherently, you take a card, you read all the words off of it, you can't use it again because it has been cashed out. And not only that, Taboo anticipates that you are going really rapidly through many cards. So you need a lot of content just to make that one game loop feel good and usable. So those are the 3 main categories I like to define. And sometimes they have a lovely confluence of 2 or all of these factors. Content that is repetitive is often necessary. Content that is necessary is often burnable. And all 3 is a nightmare. And that nightmare is trivia. I work at trivia sometimes because it's so hard because it's exacting and burnable and repetitive and you need to source it. And the thing is, when you play trivia, you learn the fact. So you can't use it again because you've learned the fact. So for anyone who writes, if you write pub quizzes, if you write for a game show, they'll tell you that you need 3 times as much content as you would for a similar game with a similar amount of play as a non-trivia mechanic. Like, Alex will tell you, this is tough stuff. Go ask him. Don't tell him anything. So before you write anything, know if you fit into these categories. And once you have those buckets, consider how long it takes you per unit to write. If you have to write a lot of barks, how long does it take you to write each line? Is it a minute? Or if you're writing trivia, does it take you an hour? Knowing that going in will help you a lot and help you structure your time. Okay, the rest of this talk is going to be divided into two sections. One is about the practicalities of writing high volume and how to just like cache at your brain and brainstorm and get a lot more workable stuff faster. And then later we're going to get into the philosophy that I like to employ and sort of the emotional end of having to churn through content and what happens when your writing becomes content. And it's challenging. But we'll start right now with those practical tips. How to manage your content in kind of a pre-production kind of way before you put pen to paper. First tip, I often advise people to keep your drafts as far away as possible from where they're going to live in the game. Obviously, don't write in the engine. I don't think anyone would tell you to do that. But add more steps in between. Write on paper, transfer that to a Google Doc, transfer that to a spreadsheet. Once you do that, you're naturally building in editing points where you have to move your content from place to place. So that way, not only is it part of your process, if you then inject editing next and even more, it becomes an addition. It's because it's already been part of your process. You get to take that extra time. Next, hyper-specific file organization. No matter how organized you are, try to do it even more and do it in a way where you can get visual contact of what you're writing immediately. And the amount of times I've been able to easily identify content lapses round per round by just like looking in a file to see like the units of content don't match has saved me so much time. And it'll save you time because you'll be able to identify it before it gets in game. So for example, do as I say, not as I do. This is temp audio I recorded recently. I call tutorials toots. And I don't know what these numbers are. I don't know which tutorials they are. And I don't know why there are edited versions. I didn't do that. So as I said, do as I say, not as I do, hyper-specific file organization. Okay, now you're ready to write. Except you're not. We're still in pre-production, and hopefully when you're making a game, you have a dev team, or if you're a solo dev, you're already thinking about who your target player is. Your target player should be for your first consideration in a lot of things, but I want you to do an early assessment of what your target player's play experience should be and what you want it to be. So think about your player. Can you estimate what the average amount of content the average player will interact with in your ideal average, not extreme case, average loop? For example, let's take Elizabeth Taylor. She's a casual. She plays for the story, maybe to spend time with friends. She will miss a lot of harder to find things, but she spends a lot of time in very specific areas. Let's say her average amount of interaction time with the game in its entirety is 5 hours. Compare that to Katharine Hepburn. Katharine is like a dog with a bone. If you are targeting Katharine Hepburn as your player, you've hoisted yourself on your own petard, and may God have mercy upon you. She's looking for 30 hours of lore-heavy, interactive dialogue trees, and she will leave you a Steam review that is 30,000 more words than the game itself. So what Elizabeth and what Katharine want, Katharine is going to be going lots of places, cashing out, trying to find everything. But that does not mean Katharine is looking for a deep experience in all of those places. Meanwhile, Elizabeth is spending time in lots of places and deserves maybe a deeper experience in those small places. If you know this ahead of time, you're finding what the player actually values and where they are seeking depth versus where they're not. You get to surprise your average player with depth in unexpected places, and you can also use these estimations to work hard to create an illusion of depth if you need to save yourself time. If it appears like there's a lot of depth, then you can get away with putting your effort in other places. The great thing about this is that this can be turned into pretty hard numbers from most cases. For example, in my work at a previous job, I discovered we had survey data that we were over-delivering on the average player experience. Games were full of content that they would never see. Hundreds of hours of play if they would have to try breaking the game to see it. We loved it. It was fun to make, but it also would get us to the edge of crunch. So we did a more accurate estimate of play length of our average player base, estimated how much content they burned through each loop, and then we estimated content goals based on those numbers. So be realistic. Now, we can finally write. Okay. We're going to get into the idea of brainstorming. I'm going to be talking about a style of brainstorming that I like to personally employ. That style does not take very long. I want to emphasize again that I'm trying to get you to be efficient with your time and develop the muscle to produce more workable stuff more quickly. So before that, I want to talk about a quick thing about the idea of self-editing. In the theater and improv world, we talk a lot about the idea of creative flow state. Keith Urban knows. Flow state has been kind of a buzzword recently. I'm sure you've seen a lot of TikToks about it. What I'm talking about here is sort of the idea of always taking in stimuli without anticipation. And you're always reacting newly to that stimuli. So you're not writing what your own responses to certain stimuli would be. If you've ever seen an improv show, a UCB show, it's that whole idea of don't think. So for example, when I pitch to The Onion, headlines have a very specific syntax. It's AP style, obviously, because it's a newspaper. So when I submit, of course, I am aligning myself to that style, but if I brainstorm while trying to adhere to AP style, I would never get anything done. I would get so caught up on syntax and perfect verbiage that I wouldn't have room for other ideas. The method I'm going to describe to you right now works for me, may not work for you, but it's a style of brainstorming that parallels this type of improvisational thinking. Loose, open creativity in this writing moment, and we'll talk about the editing moment later, to help you generate workable stuff without needing to think about it, really. Okay, we finally get to write, we finally get to brainstorm. We're at our computers, we're ready to flow. First, what I need you to do is write worse. You think you're writing bad? Write even worse than that. And we all have first drafts. We already know that writing first drafts is supposed to be bad. If you've ever labeled something shit draft in your files, this is for you. Write every little ugly, bad, annoying thing you can think of, and then keep on writing worse. Write fast. When you're writing, whether you're writing on paper or if you're writing on a computer, I want you to be hitting your next line immediately after you finish the last one. If you write something and it has a typo and it's bothering you, don't backspace. If it's bothering you that much, just write that sentence again. Because what this does, at least for me, is that it starts getting me thinking 2 lines ahead. If I'm finishing a sentence and I let that sentence go immediately, I can get down to like, where else is my mind going? And I've already dropped this idea and have moved on in that sort of flow. And then finally, write sweaty. This is a little bit tougher to explain. What I mean here is that I don't think it is useful to make a ceremony of your time when you're writing like this. Brainstorming is ugly, and what I am afraid of is that if you set yourself to devoted time limits or physical spaces or making a grand pronouncement of like, I am writing right now, I don't think you're going to let yourself be ugly. You're going to want to feel like your time is worthwhile, but you need to let yourself be ugly. So I want you writing on the bus, writing on napkins, writing on reading voice recordings to yourselves, just anything to get flow out of your brain. So worse, longer, and sweatier are just what I call it. These are pretty universal ways of drafting. If anyone's familiar with Zach Kreger, recently, he's the writer and director of Weapons and Barbarian. He called it elfing, where you pretend your first draft is written by a crappy little elf. And he's not going to do a good job. He's a crappy little elf, but he's going to get something done, and then you get to fix it. It's great. So the reason I do free flow brainstorming in my work is because I find it to be necessary. And the reason is because the dirty secret of high volume writing is that most of it, even after you edit, is not very good. So I preface this by saying what I need you to do and what I want you to do to get a lot of workable stuff is because I think you need to overwrite. No matter how good you are, if you're writing anything in the hundreds, a lot of it will not be any good. That is just how the human brain works. If you spit out a lot of things, a lot of it will fail. So you have to compensate for that by getting way, 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 way more than you need to get to the stuff that's actually good. It's a bigger bank of ideas, but more diverse ideas too, in my experience. It's way easier to do than if you had just started trying to write everything bespoke and perfect. The final product is more interesting and that every individual item starts to really feel like it deserves to be there. So we're going to talk about ratios. I talked to you a little bit about the ratio I was working with when I'm writing for The Onion. So this is kind of the breakdown: 200 pages of brainstorm, 10 pages of things I actually pitched, 1 page of stuff that has been shortlisted in the past 7 years, and that I've only gotten a dozen bought in the past 7 years. As far as you know, that has nothing to do with my talent. Don't worry about it. But in general, for what we're talking about, ratios are more akin to, say I need 25 of something, I'll write 100 and then cut down back to the 25 that I need. But I want you to keep in mind, these 100 that I'm writing are not taking me more time than if I had just written the 25, because I'm writing worse, longer, and sweatier. Yeah, so you're in the middle of writing, brainstorming, you're doing it. Writing is hard, and it's the worst thing in the world, and we love it. So I want to keep this in mind. Don't forget that you like writing. It's something you additionally enjoy. Don't forget that this is the fun part. This is the only time you get to be entirely to your own taste. This is where you'll put yourself into the project. You'll discover the edge cases that'll be valuable to you. And you'll be trying out things that will never, ever, ever make it into the project, but it'll make you laugh. And the most important thing about this time is that even though I said not to edit yourself, you're going to end up editing in the brainstorm on accident. You're discovering things along the way about syntax and about verbiage and finding it sooner because it's natural on the page. Because here's the thing, if it's not natural on the page, it's absolutely not going to be natural in the project. But you've already learned these things because you've been immersing yourself in it this way. Okay, that was the idea of writing. We'll talk about what to do after you brainstorm in a little bit. Practicalities aside, I know because I am one of you, I can't make a lot of expectations about changing your process. You've been a writer for decades. You know what works for you. That's why I thought it was important to take a little bit of time to talk about the emotional component of writing high volume. And you're going to be running into this if you work in games for any amount of time. I have spent my entire career immersed in environments where the things I write on Monday are either taken or trashed on Wednesday and forgotten on Friday. And then I subject myself to that every single day. And I had to take a pretty long road to accepting that of the vast majority of the content that I write, no one's ever going to see. And that's hard. That's hard because you are good writers. You like your craft and you like what you make. But hopefully what I can get you to, and where I theoretically have gotten to, is to make this less of a matter of heartbreak and more of a matter of opportunity. And that opportunity begins with caring a little less. A little bit. First you say, how can you ask me to care less? First, rude, please raise your hand. That's so cute. Thank you. I didn't actually mean for you to raise your hand. Hypothetically, you were asking this to me. But this is going to sound a little bit, but when you care less about the individual, you start to care more about the whole. The overall experience of a piece will always win out over individual moments, and that makes eating it a little bit easier. I'm going to be extremely millennial right now and read you a quote from Bossy Pants. So the quote is, Tina Fey says, for years to be considered a genius at comedy, people had to be dangerous and unpredictable. I don't ever want to get punched in the face over a joke or even screamed at. And this is referring to her work as a producer, where she takes a policy of, none of this is this serious. Nothing should be fought over. But what stuck with me it being a practical matter of advice, I think it's a really apt metaphor for the way you have to deal with your work and yourself in the work. I want you to consider whether you are equating friction with value. Oh, if something's hard and if I have an idea that it's taking me forever to figure it out, then that must mean it's worth it, right? It's hard because it's good, right? Is it? What is the real correlation with how hard something was to make and how good it is? Are you assigning value to it because you think the work is more valid because of your sweat equity? And when you see that friction, I want you to consider the following, and consider that there is always a better idea. If this idea isn't hitting, put it away. If it's worthwhile, we will come back to it. It will naturally come back to you. So we apply this in comedy writing a lot, but you've probably done it. You keep hitting the wall on an idea and the parts never seem to fit. And if that happens, I really want you to consider whether or not it is inherently just not the right idea. So what I'm asking you to do right now is to free yourself from preciousness right now in the writing moment. Let things go, free yourself from that on the individual content level. You are then doing better by your work as a whole. It is way, way easier to kill your darlings when you've honed the skill of letting them go at the first sign of trouble. It's not going to get better. And if it does, it's because you took the time to really think about it and how to make it easily better. So give yourself the freedom to know quickly when something's not working and then quickly leave it behind. And I preface this with this next slide. This is probably the most important thing I'm going to talk about. We are done with writing. We've gone through the brainstorm. You've got the good stuff. And now you're looking to get it into its final state. You've got the workable content. Now is when you take the time back that you saved in your actual writing. I want you to train yourself to be extremely, extremely precious in the edit. The counterintuitive thing about high volume content is that every little thing does matter. It really resonated with, yes, the 300 lines for the word grenade thing really resonated with me because I want you to consider every version of that, every version of the word grenade matters. What I'm asking you to do is it's an opportunity to get across the thesis of the work. Every sound, every font, every trivia question, it's all your opportunity to connect with a player or a viewer piece by piece. So what I'm asking you to do is initially remove emotion so you can get out of your own way as a creative. And then when you remove that emotion as you create, you get this opportunity. You have a huge mass of workable, good content that now you can make great because you're putting emotion back in and investing back into the quality of your work in the edit. So I'm not asking you to devalue your work when you're approaching high volume. Opposite. I'm asking you to really just let yourself go to then bring yourself back. Very meditative. Yeah, like I said, most important slide, and it's only one slide. Some other minor emotional practicalities. This might be a little bit hard to read. Sometimes things are boring. And they're boring because they have to be. Being boring is not the end of the world. Don't flop sweat trying to make boring things interesting. Just make them workable, non-annoying, and fit in with the overall tone of the whole of the piece. Next, test ASAP. Get things on their feet as soon as possible. This goes for your entire game, I would say. If words, yes, but the sooner you can get something up before it's perfect, the sooner you know whether it works. The amount of times I've tried a mechanic that I came up the day of has been so helpful. It's so hard to kill a piece of content when you've been working on it for 10 hours. So much harder. Break your own heart early so you can save your heart later. And then finally, I'm so sorry. You're going to have to take an improv class. It sucks. It sucks, but you're gonna have to do it. Of course, nothing has been better for me as a creative doing improv or learning the ideals of improv. But in the specific, as a writer, not only has it helped me as a creative, it has specifically helped me for dialogue. Because knowing these basic skills of kind of like public speaking and conversation that improv can give you has really helped me de-writerify my sense of how conversations are supposed to go. So if you can do that in your brain, it's really, really helpful. Once again, so sorry. Take an improv class. We're near the end. Bless this hole. This is about the end of my time. I hope that you can take some of these things and use them in your own work. Overall, your process is your process. Whatever works, works for you. You have made it this far, so congratulations. You're already a writer. This is just to make your lives a little bit easier. Trust yourself and trust that one day you will fill your holes. Yay!
About 14 minutes.
I've got 14 minutes. Delicious. We got a question here?
Hi. Okay, talk about like possibly the old playing back into the game. So sorry. But about that, like, so at what point usually do you like there's all the draft stuff in the game, what the part way, but once you said you want to get that testing and as soon as possible. So what is kind of out of that? Like at what stage are you like, okay, this is good. I put this in the game now, get
The question was, at what state do you start to do the testing before you get things into the build? Whenever it's workable, which is malleable. In this specific, so if we're making a new game at Jackbox, we are designing prompts wholesale and what works and what doesn't. And when we test, we want to do paper tests, like flashcards and shit like that, because building it into templates and waiting until the digital build is ready, it'll take way too long and we have too much to do. So as soon as a piece of content is representative of the experience, if not the actual like feeling or tone, it's when you hit if a player does this, they will then do this. That's when you start testing. Thank you.
Or the example of I can build 25 responses, some of the right 100 my ratio, so I can just kind of go over. How much of that 100 you say are repeats? We're talking about like there's typo, don't go back and edit typo, just write it in typo fix, or if you're reworking an idea, rework it as a new entry. How many of those of that 100 you say are copies of another idea that's on the list?
That's a great question. The question was, when you're doing a brainstorming list and trying to do your ratios, how much of that is just repeats and typo fixes? For me, it's about, I want to say 25%. If, you can see the number, and if you put it by numbers and you see, I will often do it one sentence, try it again. If I haven't gotten it by the third or fourth time, that's when I let it go. It's a weirdly useful visual novel, not visual novel. Ugh. It's a weirdly useful visualization of I hit it, it's not working. Okay, let's move to the next thing. So the visualization part is really in there. Right there.
my question is about localization.
Yes.
Do you take any steps when you're making high volume that you know is going to be localized? Is there any approach?
Yeah. Oh, localization. The question was how to change your approach if you are localizing this high volume content. It really is about investing in pre-production, in about the file management, and in about doing your research of what localization and transcreation means to you. If you don't need to do transcreation, that makes your life a little bit easier. And also, if you know you need to localize, don't do that last, because that's going to make your life worse. Because there could be things where sentence syntax or things that you're doing just won't work if it's localized. So if you can, think about those things first, and then before you even begin writing, and then keep on checking in with localization over that time to see, like, does this still work? Is this still going to be easy for us to process this mass amount of content? Hopefully that answered that question. I haven't localized in a while.
You mentioned like balancing practicality with like simple, boring stuff, and then also trying to keep to the tone of the game,
Yeah.
or trying to make sure things are interesting. How do you know when you're not overwriting for something that shouldn't be overwritten?
Yeah. I am the most guilty of overwriting. Often we have to write for hosts at Jackbox, and the note that I've gotten the most is, boy, he talks a lot, huh? The answer is the player. It's and it's a little bit unrealistic, unfortunately, to get your player in at every single part of the process. That's just simply not how it works. That's where the putting it on its feet part is important. You're never going to get the perfect sample size. You're never going to get the perfect idea of, like, this works, this doesn't. Players find this annoying, but you inherently know what you can and can't afford to lose. So just keep on taking it out of your brain and putting it in front of other people as much as you can, which sucks. I hate it. It's the worst thing in the world. But the more you can, the more you're going to save a lot of time later. Yeah. Any other cues? Yeah.
So I identified someone who likes to document like one thing and start
Yeah.
and I'm thinking about like file management and also let's say like, would you recommend I find myself writing about something else, don't do the documents so it doesn't get lost, or keep the flow state going and try to work that over in the edit stage?
The question was whether if you're in flow state and flow state is encouraging you to work on different things. I think that's the I'm not going to tell you how to write. The way that you write, whatever gets you there, I think is important. You do have to balance that with job. It's a job, your career, but I don't have any problem with that, as long as you are. The thing about flow state, if you're working on one thing, is because you're also trying to get that amount of learned and in-body knowledge with that particular unit of content. So I don't want you to hyper-focus, but it's that messy thing, like whatever gets you to help you hone down in that 100 to what you think really, really works. If taking breaks helps you, then do that. But I also want you to not discount the idea of, like, just really going down the rabbit hole a little bit. That's such bad advice. I know, but hopefully, like, that kind of makes sense. Right there in the back.
Switching brain state would not like 1,005 say I'm writing $100 for paper A and $100 for this mission. Like switching brain state across different times.
I'm sorry, couldn't hear a lot of that. Okay.
Switching in terms of switching state of your brain, like $100 for the gray line, $100 for mission briefing, $100 for this other thing. How do I keep the flow state while changing what I'm thinking about?
Gotcha. All right, let me say that back. Focusing on making the flow state and getting it to how do you keep it if you're also working on those many things and jumping amongst those many different things? But what you were talking about, if it's all in the same project, it's still the same tone. It's still the same whole that you're looking for. And that is a really valid way of approaching it. And also with Barks, even if it's for different characters, you're still embodying, if it's Barks for specific characters in a story, you're still embodying the story and knowing what's true and what is real about this reality versus what is not. And if you are getting into the point of jumping around quite a bit, I think that would be, as long as there's connective tissue, that you can say the through lines of like, I have this idea, I want to put it over here and this over here. It's still kind of part of the same brainstorm. You're not focusing too much. Just, it's kind of letting yourself define the work as a whole, kind of the way that we were talking about. I wouldn't recommend doing it on two entirely separate projects. I don't think that would work, but your process is your process. It works for you.
What do you feel is the best sweaty place?
Ooh. Ooh, in bed like this. Sweaty, it's just, I have, if anyone has ever used the website Evernote, don't. It's the worst. And they want me to pay for their competition is a Post-it, and they want me to pay for that shit. I'm not doing it. But that's where I do a lot of my brainstorming. It's because I already hate being there, and I want to get out of there as soon as possible. That's the truth, unfortunately. But it works. Once I copy all that and put it in a Google Doc, it feels like, oh, this is great. I can start really working on these.
With comedy writing and games in particular, when you're doing comedy writing for something like theater, like there is a time between like when you come up with a funny idea and you have to put it in front of people, it's a lot shorter than written games where you may have written something a year ago.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips or any thoughts on like how you keep confidence that what you wrote is still funny and you can sit with it for so long and sometimes it's like a very nicely setting for it's in front of people?
The question was, how do you remain confident about the stuff you're writing, especially if you're writing comedy to, the stuff you write today won't be seen for a year, that kind of thing. My go-to first, there's a lot of, I could talk about comedy writing for days. There's a lot to the idea of, if you've surrounded yourself with collaborators who are all in the same creative vision and all agree that the things you're writing are very, very funny, that will hold true. And if you are confident in that, that will continue to remain. This is with the caveat, timely stuff will be a challenge for you. Memes will be a challenge for you. If the way that I approach comedy writing is just like, what makes you wake up at night and be like, that was great. That was great and that was funny. It's very experiential. So that's unfortunately that improv thing of it feels good and it will remain feeling good as long as you don't get too hung up on the preciousness.
So I assume that writing for telling is very different than writing for Jackbox, because you've got a cat audience for one. For Jackbox, someone might show up for 5 minutes, then they're gone. How does that change the process when you're writing something where it's more someone sitting down on your work for a longer period of time versus jumping in and jumping out?
Well, the answer is the audience. The difference between Wait, Don't Tell Me, between Jackbox players, between The Onion, is it becomes a lot easier when you realize you're not writing for like Peter Sagal. You're writing for the listeners at home. So when I talk about writing and adapting to tone and take, that's an important thing. There's a certain audience expectation of how things are supposed to sound. And so you can immerse yourself in that. But what I have found in my work in comedy is that I'm not trying to write for other people. I'm trying to write my own work in other people's voice. And that's what I've done in improvisation. And I think a lot of stand-ups do that too, where they have the same jokes, but they try to make it different for every audience to make that same idea resonate. So if you can lead with the idea, it kind of flows in the same way, and thinking about your audience, but also getting you to the audience.
Just going back to your original rejected title.
Yes.
Do you have any go-to prompts that kind of get you to start to build?
Going back to my 20,000 prompts under the sea, the question was, what are some go-to prompts to get me started. If I'm working for The Onion, I like to write about horses because horses are inherently weird. But it's getting into like I like to write, because it's AP style, it's so easy to write absurdism, like a fork. I think I wrote a headline about forklift certification completing the half pipe portion, and it's a picture of the forklift going into the air. So that combination of absurdism, that's what I kind of like to do. With Jackbox content, we start from nowhere, unfortunately. We start with the mechanic, and the prompts are often the mechanic. So that's, it's hard. I don't like to start it. And that's the answer, but we have to. Yeah. That's time. Oh, perfect. Delicious. You did a great job. Thank you so much. Thank you for finishing my talk.